So to begin this morning, I want to, by way of a land acknowledgement and an acknowledgement of the incredible contributions of our Indigenous friends and colleagues to the richness of our space in family medicine, I want to say a few words about this beautiful image that you see before you. That is the image we use to situate this New Horizons Speakers Series. It is a phenomenal photograph by an artist named Meryl McMaster, who many of you may know. She's one of my very favorite artists in Canada. She is a Canadian artist with Plains, Cree, British, and Dutch ancestry. And this image is entitled "Lead Me to Places I Could Never Find on My Own." And it's the second in a series, part of a series called As Immense as the Sky. And if you haven't had a chance to get to know her work, we'll put her website in the chat. I'd encourage you to learn a little bit about her. This is a self-portrait, and she took the photo in the Badlands National Park, which is a dark sky preserve. In other words, a place where, unlike so many places these days, you can actually see the stars. And when in describing this beautiful image, she talks about the ways in which, for centuries, so many peoples have navigated using the stars, and that with the loss of that capacity, with urbanization, it can be disorienting. What she says is, perched atop my hat are indigo bunting birds who use the stars to navigate. Carrying the universe, they lead me to the stars as I seek answers in the sky. So for this series, that's what we're trying to do. We're looking up and out beyond family medicine to leaders in so many other fields, to draw on different traditions of navigation as we begin to chart our own way as a department and, importantly, as a discipline. So with that, it's my great pleasure and honor to pass to Dr. Danielle Raza, our social accountability lead in our department, to introduce our very special guest this morning.
Good morning, everybody. Olivia Chow has served the people of Toronto for over 3 decades. As many people know, Olivia was born in Hong Kong, and in 1957, she immigrated to Toronto with her parents at the age of 13. An apartment in St. Jamestown was the launchpad for her personal journey as a community organizer, activist, school board trustee, Metro Toronto councillor, member of parliament. It's a long list and a long track record of service, and now the first person of Asian descent to serve as mayor of Toronto, and the first woman post-amalgamation to serve as mayor of our city. Now, I was fortunate to first meet Olivia about 10 years ago when I moved to Toronto, and when in 2014 she was running for mayor. That was prelude to her win this year, but for me, what was so instructive was the time in between. She didn't escape to a comfortable corporate board or a patronage position, very consistent with her values. She continued to build community in the way that I had seen her do across the city. She straddled the line as an insider and outsider. She founded and led the Institute for Change Leaders, an organization that is dedicated to teaching practical organizing skills to communities across the country, empowering over 10,000 people to lead campaigns on affordable housing, early childhood education, and renters' rights. And now she's taken those experiences, those campaigns, and those people with her. I think it's fair to say, as one of the ultimate insiders, mayor of Canada's largest cities, and right back into City Hall. In her first 140 days, she's reversed, and I don't think it's exactly 140, but Mayor Chow, you can, I'm sure you have the tally on your wall. She's reversed cuts to the TTC. She's introduced a vacant homes tax on luxury housing to help invest in land trusts to build affordable housing, and she is democratizing the city budget process. Now, we're family doctors. We're not city councilors, but I think as family doctors, we can choose to play a similar role as insiders and outsiders, pushing the health system to think beyond its traditional acute care and hospital focus. We can work to embed comprehensive healthcare services informed by community into primary care and at the intersection of health and social care. It's why I think this morning's conversation, at a time of unprecedented challenges for both primary care and our city government will not only be relevant and engaging, but may and hopefully be the start to thinking creatively about unrealized opportunities and unexpected partnerships. Mayor Chow, welcome to our department, and Danielle, over to you.
Thanks so much, Danielle. Welcome, Mayor Chow. It's a thrill to be with you this morning. So we're going to leap right in. Our plan is to have a conversation, the two of us, and I want to invite the participants in the webinar this morning. If you have questions for the mayor, to put them into the Q&A. The chat is closed, but the Q&A is open, and we can see questions that you submit. And I will, after about 15 minutes or so, turn to the Q&A and welcome questions from our participants. You have such an inspiring story, and I'm wondering if there was a moment early on in your growing up in which you developed a passion for community organizing, because it does seem to have been a guiding force in your whole career.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Martin. It's wonderful to be here with you. I wouldn't say early on, because I was an artist, and I was always drawing and painting. I was quite an introvert. Okay, it's hard to believe that I could be an introvert, but I was. And somewhere during university days, I remember there was a big rally. I was watching on TV that there were all these people leaving on boats in South China Sea, and they were being forced out of Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos, mostly Vietnam, and they were drifting at sea. They were intercepted by pirates and stuck in refugees camp, drowning, robbed, raped. It was this horrific stuff happening with these refugees. And there was this rally in Grange Park that my friends invited me to. And I've never been to a rally before. I just read the art section of the newspaper, right? Back in the day, you still read the newspaper then, and not on screen. And I thought, okay, I'll just show up. And it turned out it was pouring rain, but the energy was incredible. I thought, wow, in the middle of pouring rain, people could be that energetic, feeling so positive. That was something called Operation Lifeline. And that's when I said, I looked around me and thought, wow, there are these people that are really passionate. And I felt that Canada, being such a big country, that we can, in fact, open the doors to many other people to come into this country. So I go, wow, okay, I'm going to join this campaign, this Operation Lifeline. And before long, one thing led to another. I got hooked. And then I saw that we won. The first year, we had 60,000 refugees from Southeast Asia arriving to Canada. A lot of them, most of them are ethnic Chinese. They were being pushed out by the Vietnamese government at the time. And then, of course, I thought, you know what? They are here in Canada. They have nothing. They can't speak English. They need to find housing. They need to find a ways to settled in Canada. So I started working in a community center, teaching English as a second language. And before long, I thought, wait a second, why does it take so long for them to immigrate, to sponsor their relatives into Canada? And they're stuck in refugees camp. So I got involved in the federal politics and started working for a member of parliament. And I thought, oh, this is how you get involved. You can push the federal government. Now I'm working for a federal member of parliament to get people to come to Canada faster rather than being stuck in refugees camp. And then I go, oh, this is how you do it. And then I thought, I can do this too. After
it's an amazing
years.
story of one thing leading to another, right? And I think that that's also, like, we see that in our work as well, how you start out thinking you're working on a discrete issue, but every action opens the door to another issue, and we see it in patient care all the time, and of course, often in our space that tends to lead us back to social determinants of health and community issues to kind of unravel. And I mean, what you're describing is community organizing and to some extent political organizing. And those are words that I'm not sure everyone like uses in their day-to-day or necessarily even knows what to mean when we say community organizing. Can you describe a little bit what you think of when you mean community organizing? You've just been describing it to some extent, and I do want to talk about the process of organizing a political campaign, because that's something that not very many people get a chance to kind of pull back the curtain on. But first, tell us what do you think of when you think of the words community organizing?
Well, the word community is all of us. A group of people that passionately believe in something and want to do something about it. Organizing, we organize our life. This morning, I organized and say, what do I need this morning? What do I need this afternoon? We organize our life. So we bring people together and come up with a plan. But the key thing, though, is for us to ask ourselves, why? What motivates me? What's my core values? What's my story? My story as an immigrant kid, and being able to see how sometimes as an immigrant, if you come into the country, my dad spoke fluent English, my mom didn't. So I realized those refugees arriving to Canada, if they can't speak English, they would know the whole lot of things, including how to do banking, how to buy things. So asking ourselves why we do what we do, why am I passionate? Why do I want to be a doctor? When you ask that question, what's my core value? And what caused me to become a leader? And having that motivation, then connect with other people and say, this is who I am. This is why I do what I want, what I do. And let's come together and organize for whatever cause it might be. And then once you center ourselves in a common story about, and imagining, I mean, the community organizing is really important, imagining what's possible, where is hope. If we get what we want, paint a picture of what it would be. Refugees settling in Canada, doing well and living well and not having to worry about their lives. And then paint a picture of the nightmare of if we do nothing, what will happen? They're drowning at sea. They are split up with their families. They live in oppression. All of those, right? What's the nightmare? What's the hope? What's the dream of what we can do together? And make sure your goals is achievable. And we always say, we want to end hunger. Okay, what does that mean? If you can't measure it, you're doctors, you have to measure precisely what kind of prescription, and how many, right? It's measurable. Same thing. You have to measure your goals, what a success looks like. Once you can measure it, then okay, step at a time, of course, right? You don't go straight into a surgery, step at a time. So that's what organizing is about. And so it's not that complicated. It requires some planning, but most important, it's our core values, engaging our heart.
I think that's such an important point, and something that we've talked about in our own department over the time that we were building our strategic plan. How do we start with why? Because we're always quick to rush to what we do. We do teaching, we do education, we do research, we do innovation. Those are all very important things, but that's what we do or how we do. But starting with the why we do is how we build a collective vision for what it is that we're trying to achieve. Can you say a little bit about how that translates to organizing a political campaign? For those people who haven't ever knocked on a door or don't know how we think how we approach that question of political organizing. I mean, you won an election not through chance or just by sort of putting ads on TV, but by, you know, what they call in politics a ground game. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like and how it gets done.
Well, I noticed your background. There's the word relationships. Actually, it's in different color. I think it's a bright orange red. It's building relationships. That's what really organizing is about, is building relationships. So you start with people around you, form really strong relationships. And then from there, now that you have a vision of what you want to accomplish, what is a political campaign? I'll give you an example. Going back to refugees. If you listen to Metro Morning on CBC radio this morning, right now, currently, we have a big debate about our refugees sleeping on the street, homeless people on the street. And how do we get all levels of government, everyone involved in providing good shelters, housing for people in need? So where do we start? Well, then we have to think, how many, now, after, you know, knowing that why we engage, right? Then you think about, all right, who has the power? You locate power first. You have to think about, who do I want to be involved? So it's the same. If you have cancer, you go to an oncologist, you go to your specialist, right? You think about, if I need to get something done, who actually has the power to do this? Refugees. Which level of government normally would deal with refugees? Oh, federal government. Okay, federal government. Federal government, what does that mean? We have 3 levels of government: federal, provincial, municipal. All right, federal government. Okay, I need to get the federal government's attention in order for them to pay some bills, open up some shelters, or pay some bills in order to shelter the people. Okay, all right, how do I get their attention? I can just write to Prime Minister Trudeau, but wait a second. Why would Prime Minister Trudeau listen to me? What do I do regularly? Well, once every 4 years or so, we vote. Okay, who has power in my area? Well, my member of parliament. Let me find out who is my member of parliament. Dr. Danielle Martin is my member of parliament. Okay, all right.
That's not a funny joke, by the way.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just picking
I'm
someone
just
in front
teasing.
of me.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? Okay. Dr. Rasa. All right. Okay. Let me pick on him. He's not on the screen right now. Okay. Find out who's my member of parliament. Then relationships. And relationships means power. The more relationships we have, the more power we have, especially if the relationship is strong and anchored with core values that we shared, with a shared goals, shared work plan. Okay, let me bring some of my friends together. Some of them might live in my area because, you know, it's ultimately my neighbors that would be voting for Dr. Martin. Okay, all right, let me think. Okay, how am I going to get my neighbors? I'll have a few friends. Build a relationship, start the conversation. What can we do for refugees? What can the federal government do for refugees? What are we asking for? How do we measure our success? And then what is the first step? Maybe I'll phone up my member of parliament's office, go visit her and see if she would meet with us. If she won't meet with us, maybe she'll meet with 10 of us. Maybe she'll meet with 50 of us. If she still won't meet the 50 of us, all right, we'll meet with her assistant. But if I get, 200 of us, all within the area, all my colleagues, my friends, my co-workers, my relatives. If there's 200 of us wanting to meet with her, maybe she will meet with us.
I've heard, and you can confirm or deny this, that you used the so-called Snowflake model of organizing, I think popularized and named by the famous Professor Marshall Gans at the Kennedy School of Government, who, for those who don't know Professor Gans's work, we can put a link into the chat around his work on public narrative, which is really compelling work. He's spent some time here in Toronto and spoken in our department, and as of course, among many other things, is famous for having been one of the architects of the first Barack Obama presidential campaign, and all of those signs that we remember about hope and et cetera. So can you just describe the Snowflake model of political organizing?
Well, everything I was just been talking about in the last 20 minutes is from Dr. Marshall Gans from Harvard Kennedy School. I'm trying to cram his lessons into
no pressure.
Full-fledged 40 hours curriculum into less than an hour. The Snowflake, so from motivation to building relationships, telling our stories, to having a plan, a strategy, and then tactics. The building relationship piece has a core, it's forming a core team. The core team has different elements. My way to highway, strong person in the center. That doesn't work, because then it's like if the strong person goes down, everything falls apart. The Snowflake model is actually very, it's natural. In a way that you have a center, you still need center leadership, but it then branches out. Okay, some are stronger in communication, others are doing research, others, it's just your department. If you look at a doctor at a hospital, there's different departments, and each department has a department head. It's no different. It's still at a center. People do make decisions at the center, because if you don't have a center, if it is completely consensual, then no one really is in charge. That then trying to make a decision will take forever. It's not very efficient or effective. So a Snowflake model is a fancy way of talking about how we naturally organize. Snowflake, very natural. So different strength, different departments. And then, all right, the outreach team is an outreach coordinator, but the outreach team can then split into a local team. One from going after MP Dr. Martin, another going after Dr. Rasa, not going after like connecting, you know, Dr. Rasa that represent another area. All right, so we split into different teams, connecting with different member of parliament to say refugees need a shelter. Refugees need a place to get started. All right. Okay. That's how we build it. That's the Snowflake model, really.
Fantastic. So we're going to talk a little bit about health and healthcare now. And as mayor of the city, I'm curious to know what you think is the most impactful or important thing that you or any mayor can do to have a positive impact on health.
We call it a housing first strategy. People cannot heal if they don't have a roof over their head. If they are constantly worried about paying too much rent or getting evicted, it impacts on their mental health. If a kid is not getting enough to eat, it's malnutrition. They're not getting enough to eat because by the time you finish paying rent, there's no money left. And then you buy food that is cheaper, but mostly starch, for example, protein, or fresh vegetables are better for you, but fresh fruits are expensive. So that's totally connect with the kind of income you have. But the income that you have, the city of Toronto are not, we have no, municipal government have no impact on on income. But what we do have impact on is building housing, planning, zoning, city land. So our big impact is to build. So that's why we came up with a blueprint to build 65,000 units of rent-controlled, yeah, rental housing, because not everyone can afford to buy a condominiums, right? So we identified all the land that the city has, and then we said, okay, hey, churches, community groups, synagogues, mosques, you name it, come, cooperatives, land trusts, partner with us because we are stronger together. Let's build. We'll put aside money a little bit. Here is the federal provincial government again. And we're looking at pension funds, can the private sector, public sector, let's all get together. Here's the blueprint. Let's start building. So I think that is a way that we could impact on people's health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all those of us who work in clinical practice know, feel the truth of what you're saying, that when people don't have a secure and decent home in which to live, the health impacts can be devastating. So congratulations on that blueprint. I hope to see those the ribbon cuttings proliferate across our great city. I want to remind everyone we have a few questions in the Q&A. We will shift to the Q&A briefly, but I want to talk a little bit about how our health systems in Canada and here in Ontario are quite different from many others around the world. When we look to high-performing health systems where primary care is really central, very often primary care is organized and delivered at the level of the municipality. Because it's seen in many such high-performing health systems as a local public good in a sense. And so, very much kind of close to the ground, funded and supported by municipal governments as opposed to the kind of state or regional or provincial or national levels. I'm not suggesting that we're in a position to make such a shift in Ontario today, but I'm curious to know what you think the opportunities are in Toronto for the city to play a bigger role in how we organize and deliver primary care services. Are there things that we can be doing either through the Board of Health or other partnerships to build stronger links between cities and primary care?
Wow, what a question. What a question. We already do quite a bit. So we have free dental health clinic for kids, but maybe a lot of primary care doctors may not know about it. We do public education, and so the health clinics on, say, diabetes. Health clinics also do that. So there are a lot of crossover through health clinics. Some of the practices, I know primary care doctors is now more and more practicing in teams, so that it's connected with social workers, with health care nurses, practitioners, etc., etc. That's where, when there's a team approach, that's where the city public health department can come in. And also the city from time to time would have, well, often are running different campaigns. For example, we just kickstarted our mental health strategy. And there are a lot of things in there that absolutely are connected with what the primary care doctors, because you folks are the ones that see them. So you may not know that Toronto started a community crisis service. So if a person is in a meltdown, a mental health crisis, rather than calling 911, you can call 211, will come in and help and provide care. But it's the following it up so that the primary care doctor can then refer the person to the right place, or that we can then, our social work team, our trained personnel can then work with the primary care doctor so that there's a case file in the person, because we have a lot of case file on any number of things that we do, but right now is not necessarily connected with the primary care doctor. Ideally, if it is integrated, then the primary care doctor would know where the person, that person have a mental health crisis, or that the kid that just came to our dental health clinic has other issues, for example. So those kind of connections, I imagine, would be really important. And then when we are running campaigns on mental health, quite a lot of it is education. That's where primary care doctors can also assist. So I think there are many ways, but I'm not sure right now we are organized structurally to make the best use of each other's strength. And
I
it's a
think
bit
that's true.
scattered.
I think that's true. And you're speaking also to the importance of communication, infrastructure and systems, as opposed to kind of relying on the goodwill of individuals to reach out to one another. And I want to say we had a great experience trying to support a neighbor in my neighborhood with 211, and an amazing community team came out to support this older person. And I was so impressed by that team. And yet I also feel certain that probably they would not have had any idea who her family doctor was, how to reach her family doctor, et cetera. And so I think there are lots of opportunities for strengthening those links between social care and healthcare, which brings me to a question in the Q&A. And I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. So please, folks, feel free to add your questions. Michelle Griever says, you've said, Mayor Chow, I'm paraphrasing, that data can support positive change coupled with advocacy. You talked about the importance of having targets and measuring, and not just kind of, having big ideas with no way to measure progress. And of course, the data systems in our healthcare are totally dysfunctional and fragmented. Often we don't get transfer of information. I mean, never mind between health and social care, even within healthcare, between hospitals and primary care, home care and primary care. Our patients go to a walk-in clinic. We have no idea that they went. We have no idea what happened, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very hard for us to access data to do our important work of research and quality improvement. What can Toronto do? What can the city do to help to advocate for better data systems so that data can be used across these silos for better health for patients and communities?
Wow, what a question. I used to issue a report card when I was a children's advocate. And that report card tracks in each neighborhood number of kids that graduate from school, is doing well in school or not well, preemies, et cetera, et cetera. So really health results, but not just health, it's holistic. Right? If we could track that I mean, we absolutely, because health technically is not the city of Toronto, is mostly Ontario. We could, because we have many departments that cover many different things, and I can imagine if we have data to say in this area, the social determinants of health is XYZ, and if we do these kind of intervention, we're able to get much better results. If we can show it systematically and show what we do are having the impact, then it's easier for us to say, look, that's why you need to track. We are in the middle of doing a big conversation with the provincial government about funding, of course. As you know, the 211 system that you mentioned, the team that came to help your neighbor, the elderly neighbor, 100% municipal payment, not provincial. So we're asking them to cover it. But data is very important. So we could add our voice through our Board of Health to say, let's coordinate, let's integrate. In this time of technology, there's no reason for us to be so scattered. In some ways, if we could have a clear goal of why we need to collect it, then people that want to guard their own turf and don't want to share in some ways, then their guards will come down a bit to say, all right, this is the goal. That's why we need to come together. I found, because we have a huge system in Toronto, when I try to get all the different departments to not work in silos, my way was really thinking, okay, Sarah the kid, how do we deliver the best service for this kid? And then how do we build that report card to track? And then how do we track what we're doing, each department, to serve this one kid, right? So that's how I was able to do that earlier on.
Thank you.
So
another form of infrastructure where there might be potential for collaboration between primary care and municipal services is physical space. And so we have two questions in the chat that I'm going to take Chair's prerogative here to mash up a little bit, one from Catherine Yu and one from Tara Kieran, asking about infrastructure. Well, we know that the school system has tremendous infrastructure to serve the education needs in our community. And similarly, you're talking about a massive infrastructure investment, which is wonderful, around rent-controlled housing. And at the same time, primary care also requires physical space and infrastructure. And we know that there are hundreds of thousands of people living in the city of Toronto who don't currently have access to primary care, particularly in equity deserving neighborhoods. And our department has been pushing and advocating very hard to try to see teams, primary care teams set up in those neighborhoods where they're needed most. And of course, rent is super expensive. Are there ways that we could collaborate between primary care and the city? Could we imagine, for example, family medicine teaching units or primary care teams in schools, in rent-controlled housing, in public seniors housing, in these other areas? Could we imagine being more creative with the use of those publicly funded spaces as we all struggle to try to, as you say, we're serving the same kid, whether it's the school, whether it's the housing unit, whether it's the family doctor, we're all trying to bring services. Are there ways that we might work together around physical space in a city where rents are so catastrophically high, not only for individuals and families, but also for small businesses like family docs?
you just gave me a great idea. We have a lot of office space that are vacant because people are working from home. Monday and Fridays, for example. People tend to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we have quite a few commercial folks are saying, hey, what can the city do to help us out? And there's no reason why. Well, we are actually doing a survey as to where there are spaces. The city of Toronto also have some vacant spaces. So for example, if you look at Scarborough Civic Centers, there are vacant space. In all our civic centers, there are vacant spots, because what's happening now versus pre-pandemic is quite different. The schools tend to be bursting at the seams by and large. so that I'm not sure that they have a lot of spaces. Like some do, but we need to expand childcare centers because there's a great need. So I suspect that if they have spaces, they're more likely going to have childcare centers, create childcare centers and children related right into the school. Now, but from time to time or once a week, of visiting something that's possible. But I'm thinking of all the spaces that are now vacant that one could have some kind of connections with them. And the city of Toronto could look at, can we exempt some commercial property tax? So there's some, not a whole lot because we don't have a lot of money, some kind of financial incentive for the landlord to say, if you do this, we can exempt maybe a small something. So that's not a bad system to set up. So
I
that
agree.
so if you have a group to say, in these areas, we need more primary care, you can come to our Board of Health. Then the Board of Health can go to our real estate department. That can then send the message out to say, okay, folks, where is it that you have empty spots? So
Okay, well, we can
imagine
expect a
program like
follow-up.
that.
I think it
Okay,
would be
good.
amazing. I think it would be amazing because, of course, we know that these are ways that we can provide concrete incentives to set up services in neighborhoods where they're needed. And the cost of rent is a real driver in people's decision making. So thank you for that.
The other thing is that we are now working with quite a few developers because they're developing housing. And then the ground floor of these housing units often have commercial space. Why not have a health clinic in a new neighborhood? Say in Bloor and Kipling area, there's going to be a lot of rental buildings going up. That's city land with private developers. And so some of that negotiation can also take place in new emerging neighborhoods, because once established, it's harder to get in. But when they are building it, it's a lot easier because they need to lease out the ground floors or commercial spaces anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we'll follow up on that super concrete suggestion. I want to with the time that remains, switch gears a little bit to talk about learning and education. One of the Jennifer Lake asks, and I'll paraphrase a little bit here, Jennifer, one of the impressive values that you demonstrate as a mayor and as a person is believing in your own ability to make change, your own capacity to make a difference in the world. We are teachers in this department of learners who we hope have long careers in healthcare ahead of them. How can we help to build that awareness, that value, that sense of self-efficacy among our own students so that they believe that they can make a difference in the world, not only with their own patients, but in their broader communities?
It comes back to the GAN's public narrative of storytelling. And one could look at a glass of water that's half full. You can look at the empty part of what's needing, or the half full one to say, hey, I'm strong here. And the half full one. So sometimes it's perspective. And getting in touch with our own stories and then telling those stories, often people realize I'm not alone. And that really built confidence and be able now for a teacher to be able to create a safe space, but also a brave space for a student to go into that territory to explore. It'll make them that much stronger, and also have them recommit themselves to why they want to be a physician. That's very important, to clarify the motivation and then hear each other, because the bonds that would be formed from hearing each other is very, very strong. And I think to also to involved in one or two small little things and see successes. Often confidence come from seeing small successes and celebrating it. Often we don't celebrate. We're very Canadian. We don't, okay, all right, I just did that. Whoa, you just did that? Wow, my gosh, let's celebrate it. So celebrating those small accomplishments and constantly saying, wow, this is incredible. It's so, so important, because that builds confidence, that positivity. We all have flaws. Okay, all right, putting that aside. That's the empty part of the glass of water. But putting that aside, as we get fuller, if we get stronger, we will grow. And believing that one could grow is so important too.
That's so well put. And I think, one of the things that I always reflect on about teaching is that one of the great gifts of engaging with learners is that, yes, we can help them to connect with their why, but they also reconnect us with our why. And so as we, as we go out to try to recruit more faculty members to teach our growing cohort of medical students and residents in family medicine, being able to say to people, instead of, oh, could you possibly, maybe, would you mind taking a learner for an afternoon? I know it's a lot of trouble to say, let me bring you the gift of hope for the future of your discipline, for the health of your community. These young people are going to take care of all of us. They reconnect us with the best parts of ourselves and our own motivation to have pursued a career in medicine. So it runs both ways, which is one of the beauties. Well, the last question that we'll come to is just around working in a diverse environment. Han Yan asks, in both politics and medicine, we're working in very diverse environments. We're looking after people who come from all over the world with different backgrounds. And we all come from our own lived experience as well. What have you learned as an elected political leader about how to balance your own narrative, your personal narrative, your story of self, where you come from, how you situate yourself, while also creating an inclusive environment in which everyone can feel safe in pursuing their own needs and goals?
Mm-hmm. I think I resort to the power of empathy, and it is incredibly powerful and often undervalued. And at the heart of it, when you're looking at your background, community, relationships, leadership, empathy is at the center of it. You need empathy to build relationships, to hear each other, see each other. The person may not speak English, but if you're empathetic, you connect. You can connect. and using your own story allow you to be empathetic. So you acknowledge the needs of the person and connect it with your own experience. That's where the empathy comes in. And then you say, here is a choice that you have to make. You give them a sense of hope. Then they can then grow into it or make a decision, because they need to take action. It gives them agency, your who you serve, so that they make a choice with a hopeful future that if I do this, this will happen. And that's a practice of leadership in many ways. And the best way to do it is form the community of practices, so that let's say as a family doctor, I have this very unique relationship with my patient, not for 1 year, but for 40 years later on. That's the most important relationship I have with that one patient. And it is so unique and so special. And it is precious. And see that as what it is. And that's also a form of leadership. And then be able to channel their needs and desire of what they have to say to your patient and to say to your coworkers together. Let us make the change that our society needs in order to get the results that we want.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. And I just want to say, when you to hear you describe that relationship, I think we all feel seen by you. So thank you for that. Well, we've come to the end of our time, friends. I'm sorry we couldn't answer all of the questions in the Q&A. There were some great ones, but I did my best to combine those that we could. And we look forward to our next episode of the New Horizons Speaker Series as we look up and out. And I want to invite anyone on this webinar today, if you have an idea about an extraordinary human who you think we should hear from as family docs, please let us know. And I want to, so send us a note. And I want to say a very, very sincere thank you to Mayor Olivia Chow. You're such a tremendously inspiring builder of communities and now of our great city. We're lucky to have you as mayor, and so appreciative of all of the work that you do to keep our communities healthy. And we look forward to finding new and innovative ways that our enormous department of committed health producers can work with your amazing city infrastructure to improve health for the communities we all serve. So thank you, Mayor Chow, and thank you to everyone for participating today.
Thank you all.